The future looks tense. COVID-19 has put thousands of career paths in jeopardy. In a bid to resume the international higher education, governments across the world are recommencing the visas for returning international students and for new admissions as well. There are three different dimensions that we need to look at to really understand the impact of COVID-19 on international higher education. The first one being student mobility. The number two are the regulatory changes the government is looking at in the near future. And number three is how are the universities transforming themselves to face this new reality. To understand how the universities are preparing and to really get more clarity amidst all the noise that the parents are facing at the moment. There's no better person than Syed Jamal, who will be joining us from Seattle in the US. And Syed Jamal represents Go Branta, and we'll know more about Go Branta once we speak to him. And to get the students' perspective and the details from the ground, I'll be joined by three students who are studying in Canada, in the Netherlands, and in the UK. So let's dive in. Let's remediate international higher education today. And it's an absolute pleasure that Syed has joined me from Seattle today. So let me get him into this call. Hi, Syed, how are you doing?
Hi, Sabir. Thank you. Lovely to be here. I'm doing very well. Just got back from India and just got
so home. I can imagine. Are you still having that jet lag, or is it fine?
A little bit. More than jet lag, I'm a little shocked that my 7-year-old has taken over my office. You can see the background. He very politely told me that, Dad, just so that you know, I have taken over your office, so it's our office now.
So you have there's a lot of cleaning to do that you have to in the days ahead.
I guess we have to do a lot of cleaning. I hope he will join me because he made the mess out of it.
Excellent. So thank you so much for joining in. I mean, the whole idea for today's discussion is to understand how this pandemic has affected the international higher education. And I'm so happy that you're joining me for the discussion. And I want to go straight first in understanding what you do, because you've been at this for a while. So can you please explain to us in a very simple way what is that you do and what is Branta all about?
Okay, yeah, great. So my background is international education. I came to US as an international student myself. I studied international affairs, went back to India and worked. One thing that I noticed here is how international education is organized as an industry in itself. Back home in India, we don't have a lot of international students, so you don't see that ecosystem. I saw that ecosystem here, and I was part of that because I was an international student. When I went back to India, I really was deeply inspired to create a similar ecosystem in India. So I started working with the US State Department Education USA program. During those 3 years after I returned, I conceived Branta, the organization that I now run from the US, but it was conceived almost immediately after I went back to India. The idea was very simple, to create exchange between India and the US. So help students who want to go to US to study or to do any kind of research, short-term, long-term internship, and then bring American students also to India and give them some exposure about India. I was initially very focused on interculture, but slowly it moved toward international education. So, and that's what Branta does. I came back to the US in 2015, started Branta. The core work of Branta is two areas. One, we work with higher education institutions, both in India and US, and now in Southeast Asia, South Asia, Middle East as well. And we help them strategize their international outreach. So if they want to recruit students or they want to have any kind of communication with student parents, high school, in any of these countries, we help them do that. So we develop strategy and help them execute that strategy. That is on one side. The other key part are students. We work directly with students and help them do projects which would help them uh, find what they are good at. We call them impact project, and the edtech platform that we have just recently started working on and it's about to be launched is called Collegy. So I represent Collegy and Branta. Branta is sort of a parent company of Collegy. So that's what we do. We help students do impact projects and we help organizations strategize their international outreach.
I also wanted to know, in terms of pure sentiment, I mean, because, we're looking at a very different kind of a scenario here where parents who have taken admission, I have spoken to a few parents who have taken admissions in the US, but they're not sending the kid, and they're just waiting it out and trying to figure out what to do. So purely based on sentiment, not on facts or not what's happening, because it's changing very rapidly. But purely based on sentiment, what would be your assessment of the international education for the next academic year?
Well, it will be impacted in a big way. And I totally share the sentiment also of the parents that you're talking about. I've personally spoken to several parents, and it's hard to give straight answers. US is particularly more complex in these times. One, this country is highly decentralized. What one state does, other doesn't. What is okay in one state, other state just doesn't do it. Second, elections are coming. So normally, a lot of things that we are juggling with, we would not have had to juggle with it if it was not election time. So a lot of things are political. They will just vanish as soon as the election results come. They will go away because both Democrat and Republicans are staying and doing things just to win the election, and that is adding to the confusion. So if you are American, you live in the US, you understand the politics, you will know this is for election. This is not really long term. This is just to stay and just to you know uh, go on with the political campaign. But a normal parent, sitting in India, sitting in Southeast Asia, sitting in the UAE, they don't know these nuances of internal American politics. So purely in terms of sentiments, I can say that there is a lot of confusion because of these two major factors. One, there's highly decentralization in terms of states in the US, and also because of the election side. So confusion is okay. Most of the people are confused. I think wait and watch. And most importantly, don't look at US. Back in the day, I think before the pandemic, you could think of the US. Now don't think US. Think that particular state, that particular city where your child is going to study, and do research on that. If that city is safe, let that kid come out and go and study. If you think that state is not safe, if that city is not safe, don't send your child. Wait, defer, send it next session. Send the child next session.
I think those are very, very valuable points. I think that you have made. I think that is one perspective which the parents might not be thinking in those lines. I think that's really helpful. But what about visa? Because I think Trump administration has been like notorious in terms of this whole flip flop, and finally went to court, and it did not go to court. It was it was the fastest retractment that I have seen ever Trump administration doing. So how, as a
Yeah.
parent, how do you keep a tab on on this visa? Particularly the entire regulation that is they're trying to change, and what's going to happen. So as a parent, how would you deal with that?
Again, the visa bit, when this online and F1 visa ban happened, I know American politics enough. As soon as it came out, I sent a message to our school counselors network in India, South Asia, and the Middle East, and I said this is going to go away very soon. This is 100% political, and some counselors did not know, and it went away. So this is one of the things that connects directly with politics. So I think until November, you will expect all kinds of things, visa, being removed, not being removed. So my advice is that just watch out and wait. This is something you can't do anything about. This is most of it is political decisions. You can't do anything if like the embassy and consulates, if they're not open, they're not issuing visas, they're not issuing visas. You can't do anything. Nobody can do anything. I've worked with the State Department. I know it. This process is very frustrating. It's very slow, and nobody has any say over it. So I would say watch out for your local consulate or your embassy in your city, especially their social media handle. They're pretty good in updating it, and get a
Yeah.
sense of what's going to happen. Don't look around. Don't ask anybody. Just go to the direct source, State Department website, and your local US embassy or consulate, whatever you have. Follow their Twitter handle. You get most updated information there. And also, if you read the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks of their tweet, you will get a sense of what is going to happen. And don't look anywhere else. Just follow that.
I also I've spoken to some students who are already enrolled and they're already studying.
Mhm.
So and they told me that the next semester where they're going to start,
Mhm.
that is going to be partly online, and they might not be having face to face. In fact, new students who have already joined, but they haven't traveled to into the country, for example, Canada, US, or Europe, for example, they won't be able to get a chance for a face-to-face interaction with the professors.
Mhm.
Isn't that kind of a disheartening for the students? Because all said and done, online is online, and face-to-face is still, and they want to have that campus experience. How is the university dealing with this kind of criticism? For example, the people that you're talking to, because there are some students who are saying, there's what's the point? I'm going to go there, I'm going to sit in my room, and I'm going to go for online classes. So,
Mhm.
how are the universities across US and other places that you know of are dealing with this particular criticism?
Well, I don't think it's a criticism, Sabir. I think it's just a health concern. If colleges, so there are many things. They're not just universities alone do not decide whether they can open up their campus or not. It's the state government, it's the city governments, also the federal laws. So suddenly a lot of stakeholders have come into the play. Back in the day, you are a university, whether you offer online or offline, it's entirely up to you. You see what is your how many professors do you have, how much course load you have, and so on and so forth. It's basically your thing. It's not your thing anymore. You're regulated by the state laws, you're regulated by the federal laws. So I don't think it's really a criticism, but as far as online and offline offering is concerned, there aren't very many options. Some universities are opening up, like I know some in Michigan. They're open in fall, just like any other fall session. They're open. Their students are coming. They have taken some care in terms of health safety and insurance, and only one student living in one room and so on. They have taken some health cares and they're opening up. Others have said no, we are completely online. And also, mind you, that it is not just international students. These measures are not just for international. These are also for domestic students. If my child lives in Washington State and he or she goes to New York, he or she is going to New York to be part of the New York ecosystem as well. Wants to see what's in New York City, what's going on, organization, meeting, that's all gone as well. So uh, the effect is same on both the student group, domestic and international. I don't take it as a criticism at all. It is not a criticism. Yes, in terms of international students, parents who are sending their kids, it seems like it's not that good a deal. Why would you spend so much money sending your kid for study abroad when he's not going abroad or she's not going abroad? So in that case, if you think it's not a good deal, don't take it. Just defer
Yeah.
it. Lots of students have deferred it already. And also in terms of online, offline, in some countries, like particularly in India, online is considered less rigorous, or it's not as good as
Yeah.
offline. In US, it's not the case. Online is as rigorous because you get the same amount of credit hours. You're taught by the same professors in real time. Nothing changes. Basically, nothing changes. And when I was studying in Ohio, as an international student, I took some online classes while I was on campus. I didn't want to go to that class because it was hard for me to move from one department to another. It was long distance and I was missing. So I thought, you know what? And honestly, I can speak from my experience, online and offline, the rigor could be more in online,
More.
because then you're
Yeah.
expected to write down very specifically. Offline, you can meet with the professor, talk with your classmate. Here, the learning responsibility is 100% on you. You miss out something, you miss out. You have to go
True.
back,
True.
read. And so in terms of rigor, I think parents should not worry too much about learning. Intercultural experience, yes, big time. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't have that kind of intercultural experience online
Of
as you
course.
have.
Of
Yeah.
course. How about credit transfers and articulation schemes? I'm in Dubai, and I have
Mm.
there's so many international campuses here where the whole idea of offering those courses here is that the kind of students who are here who can't go, for example, or who wants to do a part of the course here and a part of the course in the parent campus that is there. There are so many
Hmm.
universities which are offering that.
Yeah.
Because of this pandemic, do you see that this partnership between those developing countries and the
Hmm.
developed countries who have those universities, we're going to
Hmm.
have more of articulation schemes and basic credit transfers basically going ahead?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Personally, we have been approached by a couple, and we are working on with one of the universities, and they have offered us to just run a module ourselves and enroll a bunch of students who can then transfer. So there are two things to this. One is cheaper when when you take credits with a local organization. So let's say, for example, in UAE, a US university ties up with a local university in UAE and says, instead of this particular student coming to US directly, he or she would stay in UAE and would take the class online or offline, whatever your situation is. And if you assess that student in a certain way, give the credit, we will give on those. It'll be much cheaper. I mean, it could be less than 50% or more uh, uh, for students to take the credit in the home country. The other thing is, this is going to be the long-term partnership. This is long overdue. I mean, this should have happened long time ago. I'm a very big fan of these kind of partnership. Host institution partnering with foreign institution, um, domestic students in a foreign country taking classes, or at least the foundational classes in their own country, online or offline, with instruction coming in from the foreign university. I think that is the future. This would have happened maybe 10 years later. That's one of the positives of COVID, is that it has facilitated that process. So it is a good thing. It is not a bad thing. It's a lovely thing. It will bring the cost down. It will democratize educational outreach to many of the families who initially could not afford. And it would add more diversity to the educational offering of international education.
Absolutely. I think there's always some positives, and I think me coming from the this particular background in terms of education, I have seen that as a faculty, we had to definitely work a lot harder this particular semester,
Yeah.
because it's all online. And although there are always mix in terms of feedback when it comes to how online is really working,
Hmm.
but this online education which has got so much of focus, particularly
Hmm.
because of this pandemic. And I think across the board, be it higher education or be it school, for example,
Hmm.
what would be your assessment in terms of going ahead? Do you think any university, like basically today, I'm talking about international universities, maybe they might not be having enough online courses at the moment, but do you think because of this pandemic, it has kind of propelled them to look into this area and maybe offer more online courses in the coming future?
Yeah, and there are both cases. One, universities who are not equipped, high schools who are not equipped for online, and suddenly the situation has come where they have to gear themselves to offer online, and they don't have the right kind of software. Their staff is not trained. Like in India, for example, I've just spent 7 months there, and I met with several schools who are very good schools. These are not some B class, C class schools. These are really A level schools. Not the A level as in the curriculum, but really the good schools, and they're really struggling to offer online teaching because their teachers are not trained. They don't have the software. Students are not trained. Online education is a skill. You have to know. It requires a certain level of discipline on the part of the entire family. So your parent, you need certain space, you need certain internet bandwidth. It requires certain level of skill and discipline that most people don't have it. That's why when MOOCs were launched, massive open online courses, I think the very first one had 160,000 students, 120,000 people who enrolled, and less than 12,000 people actually graduated. The, the single most important reason of that was that most people who enrolled did not have the discipline to come on the computer, turn on the computer, listen to the lectures, write down their assignment, and submit it. They just didn't have it. It requires extreme discipline, and it's in skill. Um, on the other hand, there are universities in the US who survive just because of their online program. They will shut down if they do not have online programs. They have both online and offline, and this is pre-pandemic. These are a bunch of universities I personally know, and I have seen their program. I've met with their directors in New Hampshire, for example. If they don't have online programs, they will shut down. They will not be able to survive. And now with pandemic, I think they are the ones who are at a much better, they have an edge over others because they know what are the problems of online program. They know what tools are required. They've really upped their game in so many ways. So everybody has to do it. If you can't offer online programs, if you don't have the right kind of tools and softwares, if you do not have professors who are really good in offering classes, it won't matter how wonderful you are, how this whole idea of ranking thing. We're starting from scratch. So the game has been played again. So in the next 6 to 7 months, some of these wonderful universities who we thought are wonderful, who we saw performing well, they will come down because they are just not geared for online education. So if they don't gear up, they will vanish or at least lose a lot of luster that they have enjoyed for many years.
I think this is very very important point that you made. I think when it comes to ranking and the kind of background that a particular university or legacy that a particular university might have,
Yeah.
we're looking at a very new ball game, very different ball game altogether. And I think those really echoes well. I think anybody who is watching this, particularly from the point of view of parents or people who are into education, I think there's a lot to take away from this particular discussion. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm so glad that we could connect after so many years. Thanks to this lockdown. So I wish you all the best for Branta going ahead, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sabir. It was lovely. Lovely joining you and seeing you after so many years. Great work.
Exactly.
I can't wait to see other episodes that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Syed, for joining me here today. I think there's a lot to take away from this particular discussion. We understood a lot about how the international higher education sector is dealing with this crisis. And for any parents who are watching this show, I think there's a lot of information that Syed has provided. Now, moving on to the next segment of the show, I'm very privileged to be joined by three students who are studying across the globe. I have a student who is studying in Canada, a student who is studying in the Netherlands, and one student who have just completed her education in the UK. So it's a pleasure to welcome all of them into this show, and let me just get them into the call. Hi, Afreen. Hi, Chetna.
Hi.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
Thank you all for joining. Just to give you a brief, Afrin is joining us right now from Calgary in Canada, and it is 8 a.m. for her. I'm joined by Chetna. Thankfully, Chetna is in Dubai right now, but I was supposed to have a discussion with her in UK where she just finished her masters, but she's here. So Chetna is joining us from Dubai, and Maria also is joining us from Dubai. And Maria is doing her course at Leiden University at the Netherlands. So the very idea of getting you here into this discussion is to get a perspective as to how has the last semester panned out for you. What are your plans for the future, given the fact that has the pandemic changed any of your plans? Are you getting a very clear communication from your university and also from the immigration authorities? So those are the broader areas that we will be looking in today's discussion. The idea is to understand the present situation, okay, and that's the reason why you are all in for this particular discussion. So let me go straight to first Afreen. So Afreen, can you just tell us a brief about what you're studying and how has this education lockdown affected you? Now we're going to go to this question a little later, but just so that everybody knows here in this panel and also the audience more about you. So just can you just give a short brief about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to enter my third year in BA Communication and Media Studies. And just in terms of an overview of how the lockdown has affected me, I was planning to go back home from April to September. But because of the travel bans, I spent my summer over here in Calgary, and I'm planning to return to university with online classes in September. So just as an overview.
So Chetna, can you tell us now more about yourself? I know you just came back to Dubai very recently. So tell us what course you were doing and how did the lockdown affect you, if it did affect you at all?
Sure. So I started my master's in the Arts University Bournemouth in 2018, and I completed it in January 2020. And since then, a lot has happened, and I was supposed to return to Dubai in March, but obviously due to the ban, I stayed back, and I did have other plans, and I was working on a number of short films with a friend from university, and we've completed about 10 short films during the lockdown. So I think that's been really effective in some ways.
So in a way, the lockdown has actually helped you in actually
Yeah.
getting into more interesting projects. Okay, that's quite interesting. And Maria, why don't you tell us more about yourself and the course that you're doing?
Okay. Hi, so I'm Maria. I'm a pol science major, and I specialize in international relations and organizations. So I'm going to be entering my third year in September. And in terms of COVID-19 and how it's affected my flow of education, I was supposed to return back to Dubai in March when we went online. So the entire campus, the entire faculty moved online in Feb, and I was supposed to come back to Dubai in March, but I couldn't because of the travel ban. So I finally came here in June, and I've been here since, and I'm planning to go back to The Hague in September.
So you mentioned about online classes. So I want to just understand more from all of you, how that works. So I'm going to go to Afrin actually. So Afrin, I believe when we first spoke, you told me about that how your university has dealt with this, the last 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
And I believe that you already have been told as to what is going to happen in the next few months for the next semester. So can you just take us through in terms of how has the online classes been for you? Because you're doing a media course, I believe.
Yeah.
So how has it been for you? And are you kind of disappointed, or are you okay with going for a mixed sort of learning for the next semester also, which is going to be primarily online?
So I remember very vividly the night that the email was sent out saying that classes for tomorrow have been cancelled, and it was a Friday. So we had the weekend after that, and they said that they'll come up with more communication over the weekend. So the email was sent out, I think, around close to midnight. So a lot of people in the morning woke up for classes and didn't know that, classes have been cancelled for today and then henceforth. And I think that kind of was a little chaotic. But going from there, the university has been like really up to date with their communication. And we had online classes for about the last semester, which was like, say, end of Feb to April at least. So the end of the last semester. And I personally am someone who really enjoys like in-person discussions, especially because comms is the kind of subject that requires like a lot of active participation in class. So when that, I think, is shifted to like a virtual platform, there is an initial like adjustment period that both the professors and the students kind of have to get used to. But once that technical hiccup was kind of adjusted to, we found it a little more like easygoing to kind of have the same kind of discussions online as well. And I was also due for presentations the week that classes got cancelled. So having to shift to online presentations was something that I've never done before. And that itself was like speaking to like your laptop screen instead of an actual proper audience. So in terms of online classes, I'm really bummed about it because I was really hoping that the pandemic kind of like settles down or a cure comes about by the time we're going back to university in September. But I understand the reasons, and I understand that the university's policy of having only 30% of the population on campus on any given day is simply because we are still in the pandemic and we need to socially distance. So me and everyone I know, we're having completely online classes, but I know people that who are having some elements of their classes in person while keeping like physical distancing in mind.
Chetna, I was also very interested to know from you because in this period, as you mentioned, that you have made also films with a few of your classmates. So my question is, as a like day-to-day life, I mean, once this lockdown started, I think you were in the final stages of your project and you were finishing your final films and all of that. Did it affect in terms of your shoot schedule, or if you had to go out, for example, maybe your in terms of the basic logistics? I think that would also put a lot of pressure. So how did you deal with all of that? I mean, how did you manage to still make films? I mean, that's also I really wanted to know. Because there must be a lockdown. It's not like the what you have in a normal day where you can just go out and meet people and shoot and all of that. How did you negotiate with all those challenges?
I think to begin with, I was lucky enough to have finished my master's right before the pandemic began. So um, the next issue that came along the way was how I was going to shoot the films that I had already planned once my uni was over, and I wanted to work on all of those. I just had another friend, just one friend. The two of us worked on a number of films together, and we continued the same relationship and worked on several films after during the pandemic. So, coming to your question about how we actually planned and shot everything, I think um, we started off with the scripts, went back to pre-production. As we all know, filmmaking is not the kind of thing that can be done with just one single room or one single space. We need people, we need crews, we need a huge production value to make it at least look cinematic or decent enough to go for a film festival or put on YouTube. So going back to the drawing board, it was important that we had scripts that could actually work in such a situation. We tried to take up scripts that usually had one or two characters and not more than that, so that it would be a safe space to work with actors. We wouldn't have to. It was easy to control. Say we working in a small space, it would be easy to work with one or two actors rather than a whole crew. So I was not only directing, I was taking on multiple roles. I was even a gaffer, doing the lighting technician's job, doing the production, even being a production assistant at times. So I think that was the challenge that we faced in filmmaking. You kind of get dependent on every single member of the crew, and that's not something that you can um, not unlearn or actually go on without the help of all the other crew members. But having learned, we learned to survive with two or three people on set. And I think that was one of the most interesting things that we did over the past 6 months. And I'm really grateful to that.
I think it basically also speaks about how people have been in a way resilient in terms of finding the best ways to get things done. And Maria, I want to ask you this question in regards to particularly how communication is important. Now, you told us that you came in June, and you somehow managed to reach here. I mean, it was not easy, I'm sure, because a lot of people who are still trying to get in. It is easier to say that people are leaving the country. I'm talking about UA in particular, and the government of India is trying several best to bring people back. But there are also lots of students, particularly like you, who could be stuck in Europe or in US or in any other continents, and they need to be brought back. So, and I think the key thing here is about understanding what kind of communication you're getting from the university, and also what kind of communication you're getting from the immigration. So now, as far as your plan of going back in September, what kind of communication you're getting from your university? Is it helpful for you to plan it ahead? Are you confident that you will be able to go? What is the status of the immigration in Dubai? Will you be allowed to go Can you just give us some insights on that?
Yeah, so I think especially for me and my batchmates, the pandemic came at a very weird time because for our course in the third year, the first semester of the third year, we're supposed to do abroad. So a bunch of my friends were supposed to go to Latin America. The others were supposed to go to North America. I was supposed to do my 6 months in London, and it all came to a halt because of the pandemic. But I think kudos to the university. I think communication in the Department of Communication, I think they outdid themselves because they had to sort down the applications of more than 600 students who were supposed to go abroad and then couldn't. And then they kind of facilitated the whole thing and indicated how we were going to take up courses without going abroad and instead do internships in The Hague and stuff like that. So I think on the uni side, I think the communication was impeccable, like it couldn't have been better. But as far as the embassies were concerned, so I was supposed to fly back in March, as I said, and I couldn't because of the travel ban. And then what I was repeatedly told was I should contact the Indian embassy, but that was not an option for me because my parents live in UAE and I really had to come back here. And upon contacting the UAE embassy, their response was the priority they were giving to the citizens of the country, which I understand. But so in terms of communication from the embassies, it was a little disheartening because it felt like everything was all over the place and super chaotic. So now, with regards to the information I'm getting from the university for my next semester, UAE is one of the safest countries right now, so we can travel back and forth to Europe. So I'm going to be able to attend my classes in The Hague, even though they're trying to keep it as online as possible. We're also going to be having maximum engagement offline for third-year students because for our course, it's super important to be in touch with your professors and researchers you're working with because we have to produce a thesis at the end of the third year. And so they're trying to accommodate as many third years as possible on campus, and they've communicated that really well. So I think there is no confusion regarding that.
Excellent. I think it gives a very good idea as to what you have. At least you're clear as to what's going to happen in the next few months.
Yeah.
And I think because of the pandemic, I think one of the biggest problems that we all faced was the level of uncertainty. We would not even know what's going to happen next week. And only we're looking at so closely looking at the total numbers. And I think it is a big relief that in UAE the numbers are definitely on the downside. So we are a little more enthusiastic or hopeful or optimistic as compared to the rest of the world. And I think that really matters, particularly keeping what kind of plans we have basically planned for us ahead. So one last word from each one of you. I think all of you gave us a very good perspective as to where you are. In terms of because I know one of the reasons, and I think I was talking to Chetna, that you want to continue making films and you want to go back to UK and you want to go back to basically making films. So just one single statement from each one of you. What are your plans after you finish your course? And do you plan to stay back? Do you plan to look for work? Is the current situation giving you good signals or good signs that is going to be made possible or not? I mean, and so just if you want to plan to come back or want to work in some other place, you can just give us an idea about your future plans. So I'm going to start with Afri.
As uncertain as everything seems right now, I think in the long term, my plans have not changed as much. I still want to complete my degree and then look for a job over here, and preferably in public relations, and then work for about a year or two, and then continue with my master's, specializing in public relations again. And as for the situation right now, I don't think it has impacted those plans. It may seem like right now, but I can still see myself, like, I feel like I've done a lot over the 4 months of like lockdown or the pandemic that contribute towards this like long-term goal. So whether that's like shooting emails to people for opportunities, or trying to be like a paid content writer and stuff like that, which I don't think I would have done if university was on in the normal sense and if the pandemic wouldn't have come about, because the pandemic has kind of given me time to look at my long-term plans and actually implement smaller plans that help along the way. So I think it's been a good time to reflect.
I think at this point, I want to also, this show would not be possible if it was pandemic, because I was taking a lot of online classes. I was like, hell, why don't I do something like this? Because everybody's, people usually say no because they're busy, they have to go out. But that excuse is no longer there. So I completely agree with that point of view. Going to Chetna. So what are your plans and your short-term future plans or long-term future plans? Has it changed because of the pandemic?
I think I've actually had the time, as Afreen said. I did have a lot of time to think on what I want to do now. And the pandemic actually helped me in launching my own production company. It might be small right now, but I do see it growing because I'm not going to stop making films. In fact, it's just kind of pushed me towards writing more scripts and making things that are within the limitations, and that's probably going to push me more to think of stories of different kind of productions that could be possible within the limitations. And obviously, I really hope that once we cross this stage, we'll be able to grow and make films just the way we used to.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it is definitely a challenge, but I think I think for filmmakers, I think any student who wants to get into films, in the future, I think those are very optimistic, words from you. I think that would really inspire them to continue. Maybe if they have any plan of getting into film school, I think it is definitely going to be challenging, but it is not impossible. If we can definitely make films.
I would also say that even if people are looking to go ahead to do masters in filmmaking, it wouldn't be difficult. Probably this year, but not next year, because I've seen my own university make changes in the way they're teaching right now, and it's not impossible to have practical lessons right now. They are taking in less students, but you still have a shot at getting into a film school and learning just as you used to do before.
Perfect. That's really encouraging.
Especially for masters, because they don't usually take more than 15 students. So
it
depends on your application again.
Right. Yeah. So Maria, how about you? I mean, you are already set to go, but what were your future plans before pandemic, and has it changed?
So I think I was pretty uncertain about my future plans despite the pandemic. But I think the way the pandemic has contributed to it, I would say, is that I was almost certain that I was going to do a master's right after my bachelor's. But looking at the state of the universities right now, the way they're not able to offer their courses in the normal sense with their full capacity, I think I would want to hold that plan back, and I would rather want to work for some time, maybe in the Netherlands, maybe somewhere else. So I think that way my plan has changed. Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you all of you, for joining in here with me today. And I think for anybody who is looking into some information, some real hand information, I think that's what we got today. Afrin, all the best. Maria, all the best for your future plans. Chetna, all the best for your films. I wish you all the luck, and thank you all for joining me here today.
Thank you.
And that brings an end to the 5th episode of #Remediate with Sabir Haque. Please subscribe and like this particular show, and share the show as well to all the parents and students who you feel is going to benefit from this discussion on international higher education. And please stay put with me in this journey as I bring you more interesting episodes in the coming future. Thank you all again. Until next time.